Can't see nothing in front of me. Can't see nothing coming up behind. Make my way through this darkness. I can't feel nothing but this chain that binds me. Lost track of how far I've gone, how high I've climbed. On my back's a 60-pound stone. On my shoulder, a half-mile line. Come on up for the rising. Come on up. Lay your hands in mine. Come on up for the rising. Come on up for the rising tonight. As Rotarians, like the firemen on September 11, we run to those places in the world, those places in our communities that need our help. And although we are not in mortal danger on most of our projects, we should not forget how important it is to remember the invaluable service that Rotarians provide every day to those in dire need. As we move 20 years on from September 11, we honor those who were lost and all of those who served on that day and in the aftermath by continuing to serve our world today.
Thank you, Marshall. That was pretty profound and far more profound than what we normally hear. So thank you for that. Unfortunately, we also have to move on to a three-bell ceremony. As Rotary, we extend our deepest sympathy to former Rotary 1 President and District Governor Dick Galitz on the loss of his wife of 62 years, Barbara Jean. Barbara was a board member of the formerly named Women of Rotary Foundation. You can learn more about Barbara in today's issue of Gyrator, and I would like to invite everybody in the room and everybody on Zoom in her honor to stand and join in silence as we honor Barbara. Thank you. Take your seats again. Appreciate that. As I jokingly said earlier, I'm very happy to be here, and my friend Karen reminded me that we should be celebrating being here because COVID has not gotten in the way at this point, and we should be proud of that. And I would encourage every one of you on the way out to buy a mask, which I just did. It keeps you safe, it keeps everybody else safe. I've got a long list of stuff to read to you, what the CDC says and what we have to do, but I'm not going to bore you with that. What I am going to bore you with is one simple ask. Out of respect for one another, can we please keep the distance, wear our masks in the club and otherwise, because I want to see you again. I don't want to lose one of you guys, and therefore, let's play by the rules. Karen, I'm sorry, that was the informal way of your statement. And I think with that being said, it behooves me now to pass the baton over to David Hirsch. We've got a very distinguished speaker today. And I couldn't do the introduction any justice. So David, I saw you earlier on the thing on there.
Thank you for the introduction. It's my privilege to introduce my friend Jim Stovall of Tulsa, Oklahoma, who's the founder and president of the Emmy award-winning narrative television network that has made television and movies available to many of the 13 million blind and sight-impaired across the US and beyond. Jim is also a world-renowned speaker and author of 51 books, 8 of which have been made into major motion pictures, including my favorite, the best-selling book, The Ultimate Gift, produced by 20th Century Fox, starring James Gardner, Lee Merriweather, and Abigail Breslin. In his youth, Jim was a National Olympic weightlifting champion, and for those unfamiliar with his story, he started losing his sight at 17 and has been completely blind for more than 30 years now. Jim has an undergraduate degree as well as honorary doctorate of law degree from Oral Roberts University, where he also donated more than $1 million to create the Stovall Center for Entrepreneurship. Amongst a myriad of awards, Jim received the International Humanitarian of the Year Award, along with Jimmy Carter, Nancy Reagan, and Mother Teresa. For the record, I interviewed Jim for the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast, which aired earlier this year. Jim and his wife, Crystal, have been married for 40 years and reside in Tulsa. Jim, thank you for being with us today. After your presentation, we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. Jim, the Zoom stage is yours.
Well, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to do this. I want to thank David for the gracious introduction. And I always enjoy the opportunity to speak to Rotarians around the world. My mentor was a legendary figure in our community here, and named Lee Braxton, and he founded the original Rotary Club in the state of Oklahoma, and here in Tulsa, and it's still the largest chapter we have. My brother is the immediate past president of the Rotary Club in Springfield, Missouri, and I've spoken a number of times for their regional conferences. So it is just an honor to be with you. I see the effort you put forth, and more importantly, I see the fruits of your labor in my community and around the world. So in the midst of everything else you're doing, take a moment and pat yourself on the back, because what you do matters. Each and every time I stand up in front of a group of people, or since the pandemic, I sit in front of a Zoom screen and talk to people around the world for a few moments about some things in this life I believe to be important. Every time I do this, I am always reminded of a time in my life when this was not possible. It was a little over 30 years ago. That morning I woke up, I instantly realized I had lost the remainder of my sight. And I began that day learning how to live my life as a blind person. And the thoughts and the doubts and the fears that came over me that morning, those 30 years ago, would be impossible to describe to you. I was 29 years old. I had never met a blind person, and I didn't have a clue what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And the only plan I could come up with on that day involved moving into this little 9 by 12 foot room in the back of my house. And in my little room, I gathered my radio, my telephone, my tape recorder, and that was my whole world 30 years ago. The thought of running a television network with over 1,000 stations, or writing 50 books and having 8 of them turned into movies, or speaking to several million people around the world in live events, or writing a weekly syndicated column read by 4 million people on 3 continents, or the thought of sitting here talking to you guys would have seemed as impossible to me as going to the moon. I just couldn't imagine it. So I sat in my little 9 by 12 foot self-imposed prison day after day after day, getting more and more depressed and more discouraged. And I'm certain I would still be there this afternoon, except for one thing. And that is the fact that I literally ached for people like you to talk to. So I want you to know what a thrill it is for me to be a part of your event today and the important work you guys are doing. You know, when I started my business career, and I became an entrepreneur for one reason, nobody wanted to hire a blind former Olympic weightlifting champion. There's not a lot of calls for us. So I figured if I'm going to get a job, I'm going to have to create it. So I became an entrepreneur. And as most people do in life, we feel that the challenge, the climb, is to go from poverty to prosperity. And we want to go from poverty to prosperity. Nothing wrong with that. And I thought that was the end all, the be all, was just to go from being poor to being rich. And, I've been very poor, more than most of the people you've ever met. And I have been very, very wealthy, more than most of the people you've met, and everything in between. And all things being equal, rich is better. As my mentor, the founder of Rotary in Oklahoma, Lee Braxton, told me, the first obligation we have to poor people is not to be one of them. Because not all rich people help poor people, but no poor people are able to help poor people. And that was a profound statement, and it impacted my life. But only years later did I discover that the journey from poverty to prosperity is not the finish line, that's the beginning. The real venture in life is to go from prosperity sincerity to purpose. Why are we doing this? What matters? And that's the journey I've been on for the last decade or so. And as David mentioned, one of my passions now is the Stovall Center for Entrepreneurship, where we have students from 100 nations on a college campus getting a undergrad or a grad degree in entrepreneurship. And this is a journey that started for me 40 years ago. I was sitting at that same university. I was in a chapel service, and our speaker that day was a gentleman from Africa. And it was his goal in life to dig water wells so people in sub-Saharan villages would have clean water to drink. And at the end of his message, I remember the president of the university got up and said, I believe we should take up a collection for this man's work. Well, I thought that was a really great idea, except for one thing. I had $17 to my name. That was all the money I had in the world, and it was in my pocket. I had a $10 bill, I had a $5 bill, and I had two $1 bills. That was it. Well, as the basket approached, I reluctantly reached into my pocket and get one of my $1 bills out. And just as the basket is about 2 people away from me, the president of the university stood up and said, someone here needs to hear this. We were in a room of 4,000 people. And he said, someone needs to hear this. Either give your best and expect the best, or keep your money because you'll need it. And that changed the course of my life. I put my $1 bill back in my pocket and I got out a 10. Wow, that could have been $1 million to me at that time. And so I threw my 10 in there. I took a deep breath, and the basket passed on by. Well, after the chapel, I met my soon-to-be wife, Crystal, but we weren't a couple yet. We had just started dating, and we had a date planned that night. Well, I was already worried about trying to make an impression on a $17 date. Now I'm down to $7. So I'm sweating the experience a little. And so I told Crystal, I said, I got good news, I got bad news. The good news is I helped the guy with the water wells. The bad news is we're getting ready to have a $7 date. Well, she was quite gracious then, as she is now. And she let me off the hook. She said, why don't we just eat in the dining room and then go for a walk? Well, my quick calculations told me I could probably afford to make that happen. And we go for a walk, and we end up in one of the classroom lectures centers there in the graduate center. And it was empty, and we sat and talked. And then she said, what do you think we're going to do when we get out of college? Well, there'd never been any we in any of our conversations up to that point. So I took that as a very positive omen. And I could still see a little bit then. So I jumped up and I started writing on the marker board. And I wrote all these things we're going to do once we get out of college. And I said, I'm going to start a company. And then I'm going to become a millionaire. And then I'm going to write a book. And then they're going to make movies. And I wrote all these things. And then the last thing I wrote on the list was someday I'm going to find something I believe in as much as that guy believed in those water wells. And I'm going to write a check for $1 million, which is pretty bold for a blind guy with $7 in his pocket. But just like I'd written it in a movie script, every one of those things came together one at a time, except that last thing. I mean, we had started a scholarship. We'd sent 500 kids to college, and we'd fed people around the world. We'd done a lot of things. But I'd never found that one thing. And then 3 years ago, I was in a board meeting at the university, and our task for the morning was to break up into small groups and answer the question, what should we as a university be doing in the year 2030? And all these ideas were thrown out. And somebody mentioned we should have a school of entrepreneurship where kids from around the country would come and get a degree or a master's degree in entrepreneurship and then start a business. And that idea just wouldn't leave me alone. You know, people ask me often, where do you find inspiring ideas? You don't. They find you and they won't let go of it. Well, I did a lot of research on what other universities have done, and I designed the Stovall Center for Entrepreneurship. And that fall, I called the president of the university and I said, I need you to come over to the house. I got some things I want to run by you. And if you like it, I'll give you $1 million. And he came by and I shared with him the Stovall Center for Entrepreneurship. And he said, I need to take it to the trustees, but I love the idea. Well, 2 weeks later, he comes back and says, Jim, they love the idea so much, they added some ideas to it, and it's going to cost $2 million. So here I am 40 years later, either give your best and expect the best or keep your money because you're going to need it. And I turned to Crystal and I said, what do you think? And we agreed, we'll give you the first $1 million, we'll give you half of the second $1 million, and you get a match, which they did very quickly. And that was the beginning of going from the final journey of prosperity to purpose. And as I mentioned, when we got out of school, we had started a scholarship and we had sent 500 kids to college, and that's been a blessing in our lives. Well, I remember standing backstage in that same chapel where I'd been 40 years earlier, getting ready to go out and present this $1 million check. And they brought over a guy and introduced him, and they said, Jim, this is the new executive director of the Stovall Center for Entrepreneurship, Dr. Kevin Schneider. And I said, well, it's nice to meet you. And he said, you have changed my life. And I said, Kevin, I appreciate that, but they picked you. The university did. I didn't pick you. Now they ran your information by me. I think they made a wise pick. I'm a supporter of yours. I think it's great, but I didn't pick you. So if you want to thank anybody, thank them. Don't thank me. He said, no, you don't understand. 20 years ago, I was an undergrad at this university. I ran out of money. I was getting ready to drop out of school and give up on my dream of getting a college education and going on and getting my doctorate. And I got an envelope in the mail. I had one last piece of mail on campus. I opened it up and you gave me a scholarship 20 years ago. And here I am 2 decades later being named the executive director of the Stovall Center for Entrepreneurship. So, as we move from poverty to prosperity to purpose, sometimes our lives seem like utter chaos. And then every once in a while you break through the clouds and you reach a plateau and you're able to look back at where you've been and you see this amazing divine order come into play. And you realize, as chaotic as that was, there's no other way I could have gotten from there to here. Well, that was a couple of years ago. And then that next year, I was talking to Crystal and, we had so much fun giving away that much money. I said, why don't we do that again? And I was doing some consulting for a national firm that collects debt, consolidates and collects debt. So I talked to the office in New York and I said, could you put together a package of medical debt that people have gotten medical bills they can't pay? And I'd like to buy it. And they said, are you going into the collection business? I said, not exactly. So they put together a package of $1 million of medical debt, 1,184 families. And I said, okay, I'll buy that and write those 1,184 families a letter telling them that their debt is now forgiven. And after we did that, I said, I'd like to touch base with just a handful of those people. I don't want to call 1,000, but give me a dozen names. So they sent me 12 names and numbers of people we'd paid off their medical debt. And you talk about a divine order to life, and particularly when you get over into purpose. I called a gentleman in Valdosta, Georgia, and I said, sir, you probably got a letter in the last few days saying your medical debt has been forgiven. Well, I'm the one that sent you the letter, and I just wanted to call and wish you better things in your future and great days ahead and everything. And he was thanking me. And then I could hear on his end of the phone call, somebody walked into the room where he was, and he turned to them and said, no, I'm on the phone. This is the guy that paid for April's eyes. And he got back on the phone. He said, I'm sorry, my wife walked in. And I said, would you mind telling me what you told her? And he said, well, I was just telling her that you were on the phone with me and you're the guy that paid off the debt. And I said, no, tell me about April's eyes. And he said, April's our 14-year-old little girl, and she needed a series of operations before she lost her eyesight. And we were able to pay for the first one. Our insurance ran out on the next one, and they wouldn't schedule the third one until we paid off the last debt. And we were really worried about it. I was working 3 jobs, doing everything I could, and we just weren't getting there. And then I got a letter from you saying we were debt free. And now my little girl can see, and you have saved her eyesight. And he said, you have no idea what that means. And I said, sir, I do believe I have a pretty good idea what that means. So before we answer any of your questions and talk about the things you want to talk about, I want to thank you for the opportunity. You know, you guys are leading the way. You make a difference. I remember sitting in that little 9 by 12 foot room on an afternoon much like this, broke and despondent and scared and suicidal. And somebody had told me then, if somebody had just let me know that amazing people like you got together in meetings like this to figure out how we can help people, that would have made all the difference in the world. So never forget, you guys make a difference, and do not grow weary in your good deeds. And now I'm going to have David field some questions here. I only have 2 rules on the questions. Number 1, don't ask anything I don't know the answer to. That's a very important part of this. And number 2, don't raise your hand. Because see, if you raise your hand, I am not going to call on you. I actually did a live event at the University Center a couple weeks ago in Missouri in their arena, and I think there's still a woman there with her hand raised thinking I'm going to call on her. So with that in mind, David, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, David, before
Jim.
Jim, thank you so much for your time, the generosity, spending time with us, and it was very inspirational. I've got one very simple question for you. What's for dinner tonight?
What is for dinner tonight? Crystal is making dinner tonight, and I don't know what we'll have, but I do know I will be dining with my bride, and it's one of the fun things we have. She's been traveling some, and I've had some meetings, and so we have a date tonight, and we decided if we could go anywhere we wanted to go, we would be eating at our house, and she will be making some magical concoction, I have no doubt.
That's wonderful, sir. I know we have a bunch of questions that came in through the chat or otherwise, but I think, David, you've got the first one lined up, don't you?
Yes. Jim, I just want to say thank you again for a brilliant presentation. I still have tears in my eyes as you were recounting that story about relieving this family's debt, and I can only imagine what the other 11 conversations must have been like. You've influenced so many people in so many different ways, directly and indirectly, with your inspiring story. And I know that you made reference to Lee Braxton a number of times today, maybe because of the Rotary connection. I know that you were also greatly influenced by your dad. And I'm wondering if you'd share with us, a couple of examples of those that have influenced you, so we have a better understanding of where you came from.
Well, briefly, my father worked 57 years for a nonprofit organization that supports a local university here. And as I was attending the university, it became obvious to me, I was training for the Olympic Games and losing my sight more rapidly. And I realized I'm not going to get a job. I'm going to have to do something on my own. So I remember walking over to my dad's office a few weeks before graduation, and I said, Dad, I'm not going to get a job, which is really thrilling news for any parent. But I said, I'm going to start a company. And he said, well, I don't know anything about that, but I'll introduce you to a guy. And he took me into the very next office next door to him. And he said, this is Lee Braxton. He was quite an elderly man. And he explained, Mr. Braxton made $10 million during the Great Depression. He has a 3rd grade education. He made $10 million during the Great Depression. He gave away 9 of it. And he works here in the nonprofit realm for $1 a year to help us. And he lives off of investing his money very wisely. And he will tell you how to start a business. And that was the beginning of everything that's happened to me. And Lee Braxton, the father of Rotary Club here in my state of Oklahoma, was instrumental in me learning how to run a business, how to start a business, and how to make a difference. So that's kind of how it happened. My father, God love him, will be 90 years old next month, still alive and well and doing great things. And I am very honored and blessed to have had dinner with him last night. So enjoy that very much. Who has our next question?
Thanks for that, Jim. So where do you get all the ideas for the books? Where do they come from? Do you just wake up in the mornings and have a new idea and I'm just going to start writing? How does that work?
Well, I never intended to be an author. I was sitting in that little 9 by 12 foot room, and before losing my sight, that little room had been our TV room in the back of our house. And I knew across the room from me there was a TV player and a video player and my collection of classic movies. And one day, out of just sheer boredom, I put in one of those movies. It was an old Humphrey Bogart film. And I thought, I've heard this so many times, I'll just be able to listen to it and follow along. And it worked for a while, but then somebody shot somebody and the car sped away and somebody screamed and I forgot what happened. And I got really frustrated. And I said the magic words. I said, somebody ought to do something about that. The next time you get frustrated and say somebody ought to do something about that, you just had a great idea. Well, I developed a system so that blind and visually impaired people, 13 million of them here in the United States and millions more around the world, could access movies and television and educational programming. And because of that, we got an Emmy Award for our first season on national television. So I was asked to be the keynote speaker at the National Association of Broadcasters. Well, after I gave that first speech, 3 separate companies contacted me and said, we want you to speak to our group. And the next thing I know, I'm kind of this professional speaker, and I was booked on this West Coast arena tour, sandwiched on a program between Dr. Dennis Waitley, Psychology of Winning author, and Dr. Robert Schuller. And the 3 of us are doing these programs, and one day the 2 of them accosted me backstage and said, Jim, you need to write a book. And I didn't think it was a good idea, but about that time I went out in the arena, I did my hour. When I came off stage, they said, while you were out there, we got it all worked out. I thought he meant the ground transportation to the plane. I didn't know what he talked about, but he said, no, while you were out there, Dr. Schuller called his publisher and they've agreed to publish your book, and Dr. Waitley's going to write the foreword, and we need your manuscript in about 90 days. And that's how I became an author. I wrote my first book called You Don't Have to Be Blind to See, just about losing my sight and starting narrative television and the things we talked about today. And then it sold well, and they wanted another book and another book and another book. And here I am 50 plus books later. And down the hall here in my office, we have a list we keep called the pending and project list. And every time I have an idea for a book or movie, we write it down. And I think there are more books on there that I want to write than I have written, and movies and everything. And, because you just start to think in those terms. And for the last 20 years, I've written a weekly syndicated column that goes around the world. And so I've written over 1,000 columns. And when they asked me to do the first one, I thought, how do you think of something every week? And now I have hundreds of things I want to write columns about. So I think it's just, we always find what we're looking for. And if you're looking for ideas, you'll find a whole bunch of them, and they're always there. So everything is a book, everything's a movie, everything's a story. So thank you. Great question.
I've got another question for you, but David, maybe you want to go first. I think you may have one more question collected here from the group.
I have lots of questions. So this is a little bit personal, 2-part question. What do you miss most about losing your sight? And do you have a bucket list? And if so, what are some of the items that you'd like to accomplish before you pass?
The thing I most miss about sight is not seeing anything. It's not, I don't feel deprived. I experience the world. I don't know anybody I'd trade places with. But the thing I miss the most is the expectations other people have of, if you guys sat in a little room in the back of your house with a radio and a telephone and a tape recorder, friends and family would come over there and say, David, get up and do something. You've got talent, you've got ability, you got to get out and do it. If I decided I wanted to go back into my little room, nobody would say anything. Isn't it great he can play the radio? So, it's the lack of expectations from other people. So you have to be totally internally motivated, because we always live up to the expectations we have of ourselves, or those expectations we allow other people to place upon us. And when you have a disability, unfortunately, most people won't expect you to do anything. Now, I speak occasionally for blind groups or disabled groups. And I never forget, several years ago, I was the speaker for the National Federation of the Blind, their annual meeting. There were several thousand blind people. And, I told them, I'm probably the first guy ever to come here able to tell you the truth. Most of you, if you suddenly received your sight back today, you would have to come up with another reason for the lousy way you live your life. And nobody else in the world may expect anything of you, but I do. Because, my blindness is no different than someone else's divorce or someone else's bankruptcy or someone else's unemployment or someone else's cancer. We're all only as big as the smallest thing it takes to divert us from where we ought to be. So thank you, sir. Great question.
Jim, I think I've got room for one more question here, and this goes to Brian. You got it right there.
Hello, Jim, a fellow blind person talking with you here. And keep up the great work you do. I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, and I'm a member of the National Federation of the Blind, and we keep moving on as we do what we do, just as you do and I do. And you're great in doing things in the world that you want to do. I will be an eventual RI president and Broadcasting Hall of Famer. We keep moving and grooving.
Well, thank you. I'm a huge fan of the NFB, and their motto is changing what it means to be blind. And blind people specifically and disabled people in general have a lot of benefits and a lot of rights now they didn't have, because a lot of people like you and your organization were willing to go up on Capitol Hill and pound on doors till people paid attention. So I want to thank you. And once again, David, I want to thank you for the invitation, and I want to thank all of you for your attention and the powerful work you do, because it matters. It matters greatly. And as always, I'll leave you with this. Hold on to your dreams and stand tall, even when those around you would force you to crawl. Hold on to your dreams as a race you must run, even when reality whispers you'll never be done. And finally, my friends in Rotary 1, hold on to your dreams and wait for the magic to come, because on that miraculous day, your dreams and your reality will merge into one. Love you more than I can say. See you next time. Thank you.
Sir, on behalf of Rotary 1, thank you for your time. And I'm going off script here. It's Rotary tradition that we present a small little present, which I don't know what it is, but we'll figure this out afterwards. So it'll be in the mail, right? With that, thank you again, and maybe we'll move on to special announcements. I think Walter's in the room. You want to come up here and grab the mic for a second? Sure.
Thank you. As some of you may know, I have been a Better Business Bureau Torch Award judge. And the Torch Awards for business ethics are open for entry. Entries for the 25th Better Business Bureau Torch Awards for Ethics, the most prestigious business award for the Better Business Bureau, are now open through Wednesday, September 29th, 2021. It's free to enter. Companies can enter directly or nominate other companies they do business with. Companies can also nominate great businesses. It's free to enter. Only takes a minute to nominate a company for one of the most powerful brand building awards that will last a lifetime. Being a recipient of a Torch Award or Firestarter Award indicates that the business believes in the high standards of trust, ethics, and excellence. Sounds a little bit like Rotary. It also means that the business consistently acts on these standards and continuously integrates them into daily business practices. The 2021 Torch Awards for Ethics highlights business integrity, excellence, and community engagement. Some Rotary members have been businesses that have received the Torch Award. Submit your entry for the 2021 Torch Awards today. The deadline for entry is September 29th. They're being accepted for all Chicago and Northern Illinois-based businesses that have been in business for 3 years or more and have a superior track record of trust, ethics, and exceptional service. There are also additional categories that have been brought on as Torch Award businesses. Minority owned and operated. Ownership must be at least 51%. Women owned and operated. Ownership must be at least 51%. 6 categories are based on a number of employees. There's a fire starter award for the younger companies who have been in business between 1 to 3 years as of December 9th, 2021, and business associations, 501c6s, I believe. So I would encourage the Rotary members here that if you know someone or if you have a business, please nominate. I will pass this along, so this will be part of the newsletter. And we have a number of Rotarians that have been Torch Award judges. And I believe today I talked to Alita, and she will be a Torch Award judge. Thank you.
So the next announcement is that our district is launching the Polio Plus Society launch, and that will be taking place very soon. I think, Tamara, we have some kind of link for that, for you guys to check it out. It'll also be in our gyrator. Then I guess it's time to introduce our guests. And why don't we start with the guests in the room? Does any one of our Rotary members have a guest at the table? I know we have international guests. Any domestic guests? No. Why don't you guys, our friends from Guatemala, come up here, and you have a minute each. So come on up, grab the mic, and say who you are, where you're from, what your club is. Bienvenido.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Josefina Figueroa. I am the president of my club, Guatemala El Asunción in Guatemala. Nice to meet you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your hospitality. My name is Gerardo Vera. I'm the chair of the project committee of my club, Guatemala Norte. Josefina is my wife, and as usual, she is the president. And we are both from a different club, but we're working together with a lot of projects. And I'm really, really proud to be here, and it's really nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Online, who do we have online? Do we have guests online? I can't see it, but the cam team, if you can manage that.
I would say anyone online, if you'd like to unmute yourself and go ahead and introduce.
Okay, I'll start. Hi, my name is Nadia Navarrete. I'm from Argentina, 4945, and I'm from a city which is just across the river from where Marca is from.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Roberto Silva, past district governor of District 4340 in Santiago, Chile. Glad to be once again with you guys. Hugs. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, sir. Do we have anybody else?
Hi, this is Leslie Saludin from Rotary Club of Gombak, Kuala Lumpur, District 3300, Malaysia. Greetings to all of you. And my son is in Chicago, and I've been to your city twice for both the Centennial Convention and the COL. So greetings to all and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Great. Do we have anybody else, or was that it? Looks like this meeting spans around the world. Nice job, Rotarians. And to our visitors, keep coming to our meetings here. Visit the city of Chicago, one of the greatest cities in the world, so come visit. That being said, I think we're done with the guest introductions. Quick reminder, what makes this club great? It's not me, it's the membership in general. So it's all of you, all of us together. That's something that we need to keep in mind. Bring your friends to the club so they learn about what we do, what we stand for. I think that's quite important. A couple other notes here. We've got a hands-on service project coming up. That is, let me see, September 20th, Monday. It is the Edward G. Irvin Foundation Woodlawn Community Food Pantry, and that's from 12 to 2, where volunteers are needed. I think we've got in the gyrator some information on that. So please take a look at that. The food distribution will be from 2 to 5. Those who can make it, that would be great, much appreciated. We also have a new member orientation coming up. That's September 17th. And there's another one, I think, on November 5th. For those new members who just recently joined the club, attend these. It's a great opportunity to get to know the other members. I always find that because we all have different backgrounds, the fun part is talking to the others and learning from the others. So for the new members, please attend those. Those are fun events. Then finally, we've got a diversity, equity, and inclusion and Rotary event that is on September 23rd at 6 p.m. I think the gyrator will have some information on that. The speakers. Yes, please. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. Sorry to take over. This is our third of our series on DEI, and we will have our own member, not our member, but Rotarians, Xavier Ramey and Dr. Bowtie Jenkins to come and talk to us. And our talk is about people of action. That's what we say Rotary are. So what do we do next to help with DEI? And so we really would love for everyone to come and be a part. And we are also asking Rotarians to invite 3 of your non-Rotarian friends to come and be a part and hear what we believe in and what we're trying to do to make this world a better place. Thank you. And you can register online, and it is virtual.
Thank you, Alita, for that. Appreciate that. So, and I think with that, we've got a couple of committee meetings coming up. We've got the Public Relations Marketing Committee, that's on the 16th. We've got the Community Service Committee meeting, that's on this October 7th. And the International Service Committee meeting on October 13th. So all the information is, I guess, in the gyrator. We've got a networking roundtable on September 17th here at the Union League Club on the 4th floor, the regular Friday meeting. And with that, I would like, where is he? Yes, please.
We have one more volunteer opportunity, Sarah.
Sarah, you want, come on, yeah. Sorry if I skipped that.
No.
Okay.
It's new.
All right, then Sarah, come on up.
Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Buck, the co-chair of the Community Service Committee, and we have a brand new volunteer opportunity that's stemming from our CPS grants. So for those who are unfamiliar, last year our community funded 10 schools in the Chicago Public School system with grants ranging from gardening, which I'm going to talk about today, to robotics. And our first opportunity that is through one of these grants is with Simeon Career Academy. And their grant was for a school garden that's put together by the students. And so they're going to be harvesting their crops and making quiche and everything that goes along with that. And so on October 7th and October 8th, Rotarians are invited to go out to the school and help the students harvest their crops and cook with them. And so these are seniors in high school, and they're very excited to meet some Rotarians. So a registration link will be going up, and possibly, I guess, in the gyrator also. And so the time of that might be a little bit tricky for people who are working, but it is during the school day. But it's in the afternoon. So I can't remember the exact times, but it's between like 1:30 and 3 or something like that on October 7th and October 8th. So if that's something that you're willing and able to do, please register.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. And before we close out, and I would like to invite our past president, Mr. Eric, up here. I see our current president, Marga, is on there. Marga, hi. Eric, can you do us the honor and do the four-way test? Would you guys all please stand?
If you don't mind, I'm actually going to squeeze in one quick announcement here. Yeah, see, I'm going to take over the meeting too. This is just about the nominating committee, just so everybody knows how nominations work, because the nominating process has begun. Our nominating committee consists of Wes Westerfield, Ted Nebel, Lisa Russ, Wayman Anderson, and myself as chair. And we will submit a slate of candidates to the general membership in early November. So before that time, if you or somebody you know you think would be a great candidate for leadership in the club, please do reach out to one of us and let us know. And with that, we're going to do the four-way test, which is for those in the room to my left. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And of course, the famous fifth item, will Timo buy us all drinks after? I mean, is it fun?
Yes, I will. Those who want to join me on the fourth floor will go right now. With that, on that happy note, we conclude the meeting. Thank you.